on Psilocybin live stream with you today. I don't know what I'm feeling like talking about today, Tristan. I hope we have some people join in. I'm just kind of enjoying not thinking about anything. I can't hear you. You're muted. There you go.
Probably the best thing to think about.
Oh, I sure have a tendency to overthink, so it's nice to not be thinking too much. It's just been a beautiful day. Just got done having a nice dinner with the fam. So, what's on your mind?
Now that you say that, I guess like overthinking because there was a point in my life where I prided myself on being like this analyzer, like, oh, there's a way of fixing this, or like I can think my way through these processes. And I remember coming to this point where I started realizing that all of this analyzing and all of this thinking was a mechanism for my brain to try to detect patterns, to try to figure out what there was to expect in order to feel safe in your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it really is. It's a coping mechanism in many ways, like this just irrational, anxious thinking that we may not even perceive as anxious.
Yeah, no, I love that you said that. In terms of pattern recognition, um, because what we really find out, and I've done the same thing. I can remember being a kid, and when my parents were fighting and I was scared, I remember looking for patterns. I would find patterns and hone in on them, and just kind of become obsessed with them. And that is a helpful thing in many ways. But it's interesting how you said that, how that led to overthinking, and I believe for myself in many ways it did as well. Um, but the thing about pattern recognition is it seems to function from a different place of mind. When you're at least when I reflect on pattern recognition in mushroom hunting, pattern recognition in trip sitting, um, that it's not the analytical mind that is really helpful. It's the broad perspective, you know. And then I have found myself anyway, after taking that broad perspective and being able to kind of sift through some data, then applying the overthinking to my analyzing of what it all means. And what's much more helpful is to actually to feel what you feel, to feel what arises when you're observing whatever information it is, really. And that's in trip sitting, and not just trip sitting, but actually being the tripper. When we start to try to break down our experience to understand what it is that it's trying to tell us, maybe you as well have had experiences where you just really tried to contemplate and analyze and think about what it all means. And the path of least resistance, as we were talking about earlier, is to just feel it, to feel what it's trying to tell you rather than to try to pick out in little details and what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. And I kind of wonder, you have a painting that says focus on the feeling there in the living room. And there's so many times in therapy that those words have kind of been, reframed and expressed to me. Like, how are you
Mm-hmm.
feeling? And
Mm-hmm.
then trying to dissect that. But that's a totally different, it's so much different when you're sitting there having that conversation than when you're literally strapped in and you have no choice but to feel what this circumstance, the feeling surrounding this circumstance is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's something that I mean, so profound and impactful, like when you're talking about as the uh, tripper or as uh, the person in that space. Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons that you do get this like cliche 10 years of therapy, 30 years of therapy.
Yeah, you get out of your head, you get out of the thoughts, and you get into the feeling, and you allow that feeling to move. It's it's all energy. It just comes back to that. It's all energy, and it's just the thinking about things does not move energy. The contemplating of it, it's just like spinning a wheel. We even have that metaphor. Uh, you know, so just feeling, yeah, and that's where I'm at. I'm feeling so good, man. I'm feeling better than I have felt in years, and it just kind of keeps getting better. I've had rough days and stuff, but man, I'm feeling so much gratitude and appreciation for what there is in life and the people that I know. I was talking with, I guess it was Courtney this morning. I went out and had dinner with a friend last night, and it's just the first time since I was in high school, honest to God, that I've had particularly men, like a number of male friends that were just growing closer and closer, and feels great. What we got?
Oh, right now you're named Tristan. Now you're named Derek.
That's okay. I can be Tristan. We're all one. We're
Oh,
all
there we go.
one. So, anybody out there want to talk mushrooms, talk psilocybin, talk the psychedelic experience? Be sure to share that link, Tristan, if you would. You can just hop in the room, ask your question, and or bring a comment, tell a story. Really want to make this more and more about hearing from you all. I'm happy to contribute and happy to be here, but this is a community service. This is something that we, Tristan and I, are gifting out to all of you, providing folks with an opportunity to share, to learn, to grow, to teach, all the things that community does. So, yeah, I could just sit here. I could just use this time to meditate, really, if nobody wants to talk, because that's where my head's at. I'm feeling so good. I just want to keep feeling it, but would love to have some great conversation with some great people. Last week's, if you all didn't check that one out, that was an incredible conversation. Um, Sasha down in Florida jumped in for the last half of it, and man, we had a really, really great talk.
Yeah, I believe that there's something special about whenever he jumps in here.
Mm.
Specifically around the fact that there's not many people that can relate to what you and Courtney went through,
Mm.
and even his, to an extent, like you can only relate to like what he went through.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, it's not like he had it
yeah,
worse than we did. We didn't get into the details of it all, but man, I've been thinking about that a lot in the last couple of days since there's been a lot of controversy around the Supreme Court ruling. And, first and foremost, I'm all for choice. Um, but it's so ironic how, you know, in a multitude of ways, really, we have allowed the powers that be that have no understanding, no relation, are not relatable to the topics that they're ruling on, making drastic rulings that have huge implications for everyday people like ourselves. And the drug war is one of the most glaring kind of um, manifestations or examples of that. How we have for so many years, so many people going to prison for so long, losing so much money, so much productivity, so much connection, community, and family because of bullshit laws around drugs, period. So, uh,
oh, and it only depends on your income bracket and skin colors,
oh
ultimately
yeah,
how
I mean,
that plays out.
even this abortion thing. I mean, if you got money, you can go to another state. You work
Oh, yeah.
figured out. Uh, so, you know, that goes back into our conversation too. And maybe that's something that's well worth talking about within the psychedelic and spiritual community is that there is no shame in having money. There is no shame. Money is a very valuable tool that has been used against us for a very long time. And by continuing to acquire wealth ourselves and being able to, just play the game, participate in the game, excuse me, is something that I think particularly spiritual communities, psychedelic spiritual communities would benefit from considering. It's there's a ton of work that goes into taking care of people thoroughly through the psychedelic experience. The information sharing and onboarding and just preparation that you do with people, especially when there's a lot of trauma and a lot of history involved. The experience itself obviously is a significant period of time. It can be a long period of time, and then if you're really going to be an effective facilitator, if you're really going to be a thorough support person, then you're going to be helping that individual or individuals for weeks and maybe months into the future. And so um, it's interesting, this conversation that we have around money in the psychedelic community. There are those who are, firmly in camp free, and those who are, $10,000 for a single government regulated session, and then those of us, I consider myself one of those, that fall in between. Definitely made the mistake of not focusing on being compensated for my work in the past, and it put my work in great jeopardy.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't, if you do it for free, money's a tool, like you said. And I think that there is that place where with any tool, you're able to build whatever it is that you're desiring to build. But if you're from a point of free for all, then you have no tools.
Yeah.
And what can you build without tools? Uh, I mean, going back to this whole Supreme Court decision, and really, it's the first time I believe in my generation that I've seen such a large public outcry. Uh, and I never thought that this was going to happen. Like, I don't think that this was something that a Supreme Court should have to make the decision about, but I didn't think that it was something that would ever change.
Mm.
I agree with the pro-choice side of this, but I also think that this is something that was almost a constitutional based thing. I didn't really think that this was a court decision based thing. But I think I lost my track of thought there. The thing is that the same way that you're seeing people come out and say like this is wrong. I mean, the drug war stuff is definitely wrong. You just have certain entities that are doing things around that. But again, with more tools and more voices and more people, that's the only way that you're going to get change in this. And truthfully, I think that that's how this entire situation is going to play out. On the other hand, like I don't believe we're going to sit at where we're at now forever. Like
Mm-hmm.
I do think that you will see money controls legislation, and it will more than likely shift once again.
Well, dude, I mean, like here's the thing, right? And you see the same thing with the drug laws. It took some time for it to all play out, but guess what? When you make a rule, you make an outlaw. When you make a law, you make an outlaw. You're going to have people that not only are going to be pushing back in terms of abortion, but in terms of like you think you're going to light women up, you just lit it all up. You wanted to keep women from having a voice and having a say. Well, guess what? you just you just invited them all into the room. And it's the same thing with the drug war. It took a while. People tuck their tail between their legs, but enough people got had some cannabis, found out it wasn't the devil's weed, ate some mushrooms, did some LSD, whatever. And you just can't stop the movement of people doing what they want to do. And anytime you try to suppress them from doing what they want to do, then they're gonna double down on it. So like Courtney was saying, like I forgot what it was exactly, but we were walking Bardstown Road Saturday night, I think, and I don't know what it was. There was some women came by and were just like, I don't know if they're being like really loud from their car or or if it was something to do with like oh, that's what it was. This girl, we walked by a clothing store, and in the front there was a female's uh casual like jersey that was like completely see-through. And I didn't even catch it or whatever, but she was like, "Oh yeah, did you see that?" I was like, "What?" And she walked back and she showed me, and she's like, "That's all this shit's gonna do for the Supreme Court. You're just gonna have women pushing the boundary in every aspect now. You're gonna have young women walking around just like topless or being like really vocal and just saying, you know what, fuck you. Now you really get it." And like it's the fucking irony of it all. It's like the big joke that we play on ourselves whenever we're trying to tell people to not do something is just like you just gave them license to double down on it. And that's in the cleric training, that's one of the things that's coming out. It's been people have said things to me about my kind of joke, but really actually serious rule. Only rule of trip space is don't leave. You know, and I know we've talked about this on here before, but I think it's worth repeating. Um, that's not really true, right? There are plenty of things you don't do in trip space. You don't have sex in trip space. You don't have sex in a ceremony with a bunch of other people. You don't like get violent, whatever. There are things, but the deal is, and the joke behind it all is that, you know, if I try to prevent you from every little nitpicky thing, and I've worked with facilitators that tried to micromanage everything about the trip environment, and they think that they're going to be able to predict how people are going to act and what it's going to look like. And every single time you do that, and every single time I've done that, it just it just ends up encouraging the very thing they weren't even thinking about it. Maybe they weren't even thinking about like using their cell phone or something during a trip. But I start making a rule about don't use your cell phone. Then what are they thinking about somewhere in the line? They're like, oh, cell phone, don't use my cell phone. Well, I want to use my cell phone. Who are you to say that I can't use my cell phone? You know? So it's an interesting balance. That's again why I love the Taoist perspective is there's just so little real requirements. You just be, you let other people be. People are good. I truly believe that life is good. Life itself is innately good, and people are life. And the more we just allow life to express itself, then like, it's just going to get better and better.
Well, going back to what you were saying about this entire like situation and other situations, you can only hide things through lies for so long, especially when you're talking about the masses. I mean, like it's one thing like you want to lie to your kid and tell them like uh women are the devil or
even
something like that's
even Santa
fine.
Claus, like you fucking,
Yeah.
I've refused. I have not any of my kids. I have told them from go, ain't no Santa, ain't no Santa shit. Don't come here. Like we can pretend or whatever, but there is no Santa, and I'm not going to try to convince you that there is because you're going to end up resenting me
Yeah.
over it.
That's a hot topic. Like,
Oh, dude, I've pissed off a lot of parents, buddy.
oh, you've Baba Booey, that's fucked up.
Maybe I just pissed off Baba Booey. I don't know. He's looking like he is real.
I
Well,
will say
I
this:
do
his
love
energy is.
his energy. The Santa vibe is real. Well, I do love now, especially turning the story around to the real Santa Claus and the psychedelic mushrooms. Like, That's another great opportunity. And equally, I think with this abortion thing, what a great opportunity to inform Christians that not only did Jesus not say anything about abortion, right? But Jesus was a Jew, and according to Jewish law from long before Jesus, a baby wasn't alive until it took its first breath of air. Abortion is 100% okay in the Jewish faith, and it has been. It
Ooh,
has been for since forever, right?
clip
And
it.
huh?
Clip it. I'm saying we're gonna clip this.
No, fuck that. No, I mean, I'm just talking. I'm just telling the truth here. So anyway, we don't have to talk about this. It is a controversial topic. That's one of the things, again, you and I have said and brought up in this, that you know, on psilocybin, we should be able to talk about anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not hating on anybody. I'm not calling anybody stupid. If you disagree with me, well, that's fine. You have your right to, and I encourage you to disagree with me because there's a lot of shit that I don't know what I'm talking about. But I do know that before Jesus was born, that abortion was legal under Jewish law, and So anyway, uh, okay, Sasha's saying he'd like to come on in a little bit here. That's cool. Yeah, we can talk about Amanita muscaria, Baba Booey. I've had it in multiple variety or multiple kind of preparations. Don't ever eat it fresh. Don't ever. I was on psilocybin, like actually on psilocybin, tripping on psilocybin, and we went to Red River Gorge in August. We show up, we're hiking down the trail to our camp spot, and lo and behold, there's this beautiful Amanita muscaria right there. And it was just like, all right, the gates of heaven have opened. First time I ever found an Amanita muscaria. I didn't actually eat that one, but later on that night, this was interesting. We're like, we eat all these mushrooms, go for a hike, we get into our spot. It's the most mushrooming I've ever seen anywhere. There had been so much rain, and this old growth forest was just covered in every type of shroom. And we were supposed to meet some guys there. They didn't show up, so we just went and did our own thing. Me and my buddy went and camped in our own spot. It gets dark. Finally, the mushrooms are coming down. We've been there for a good while, and we're sitting there talking about our buddies, how they never showed up. And we're like, oh, well, I guess, whatever. I hope they're okay. And about that time, I heard in the distance, Eric, Mike, Eric, Mike. And I was like, what? Is God? Who is this? Santa Claus? And it was my buddies way up on the top of the bluff. We ended up hiking up there. And when we got up there, one of my friends who is now deceased, an amazing, beautiful soul, Ryan Gatewood, that dude, I saw him one time. He'd been trying for like 2 months to get a bag of mushrooms. I'm at his house. The guy shows up with a bag of mushrooms. Ryan pays him and immediately takes the bag of mushrooms and just starts eating them. He's like, dude, I've been waiting 5 months to eat mushrooms. I was like, Jesus, dog, you ain't gonna like set the stage. He's like, no, this is the stage. Motherfucker, I'm eating my mushrooms. So anyway, we get to the top. Yeah, he was awesome, dude. That guy was a trip. He would also ride around smoking cigarettes with the windows up, like chain smoking cigarettes with the windows up in his car. And he died of a heart attack at age like 38. God bless you, Ryan. Though I love that guy so much, man. And we get to the top of the hill and the bluff. Actually, I can't believe it, the stupid ass night hike. And he's up there, Ryan and the rest of our friends, with 3 or 4 big, nice Amanita muscaria. He's like, hey, dude, I thought you'd like these. I was like, oh, motherfucker, you're the bomb. And so I took those home, those fresh ones home, not knowing anything what I was doing. I just knew that there was a history of people eating them, so it must be okay, right? And I was 22, 23 maybe. Hadn't even had my kid yet. And so I go next day after the psilocybin trip. I'm going to eat these amanitas while my wife was at work. I eat 3/4 of a cap that's about yay big, and that big, and I saved 1/4 of the cap. Like, who knows what if I'm gonna need to take the rest of this mushroom to the hospital or something if things go bad. So I'm sitting there I go lay on my couch, and my buddy that I went camping with, he told me I should watch Led Zeppelin's "The Song Remains the Same" because apparently they eat Amanita muscaria mushrooms in the movie. And so turned it on, and started watching it, and like I just was like laying on the couch and drooling. All of a sudden, I'm drooling and sweating, and my eyes are all blurry and swirly, and I was like, "This is not fucking cool." I think I really think I'm dying this time. And I had not had a psilocybin death at that point either in my life. And so turned off the movie because I just couldn't fucking deal with that. And then was like, all right, I'm gonna take a walk. I'm gonna try to walk this off. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die on the field, I guess. And I walked across the street into a school parking lot across from where I lived. Big, tall white pine tree right there, and go over, and underneath of the white pine is a big fairy ring of slippery jacks. It's a Suelius genus. I don't remember the species, but it's a type of polypore, stalked polypore, not a bolete, but in that same family. And so I get over there, just feeling all this swirling and sick and sweaty and hyper salivating. And I look down the mushrooms and I'm just like, what the fuck are mushrooms? This is crazy. These things are, we don't know anything about them. And as I'm just sitting there feeling this mushroom, my awareness, or me, I don't know, like I just like suck out of my body, and I'm at the top of this pine tree. And like I'm at the top of this pine tree, swaying with the top of the pine tree and looking down at me, looking down at the mushrooms. And when I realized, kind of like a few seconds after I realized what was going on, my consciousness just slammed back down into my body, gave me a physical jolt, and I was like, "Fuck it! If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die in my sleep." So I went into the house and laid down to die there. And I didn't. I made it through. I made it through. So don't eat fresh amanita mushrooms. That is an important thing to remember. Dried, however, is a different story. Amanita muscaria mushrooms have abitanic acid and muscimol. Um, Muscimol is a safe psychoactive. It's a GABA analog, or it functions off the GABA receptors. It's actually good for brain health. There's some studies in primates that show, particularly aged primates, muscimol um, aids in decision making. So, um, when you dry the mushrooms, though, some of the abitanic acid can, I'm not sure if in that instance, when you dry them, if it decays completely, if it turns into muscimol. But the point being is that abitanic acid can convert to muscimol with one simple exchange if it goes through the right process. I'm not for sure. Somebody smart, more knows more than me, might contribute around this in terms of if simple desiccation will do that or if it just renders it inactive. Um, And so when you eat the dried mushrooms, you don't get nearly as much abitanic acid. And so you can eat more and have more of a psychedelic effect without having the toxic effect. Because abitanic acid can absolutely kill you. If you eat roughly for the average like 180 kilogram or pound person, 28 grams of Amanita muscaria can get to a toxic level. So, and Amanita muscaria mushrooms are extremely variable in potency from location to location and within the same collection. So, it's it's not something to just go like flippantly experimenting with. So anyway, dried Amanita muscaria, I've had those a number of times in dosages up to 15 or so grams, maybe like 20 grams is probably my highest I've ever done with Amanita muscaria. And it's been overall really pleasant. There were a couple of samples that must have been higher in the abitanic acid because I did get that hypersalivation and what they call the fish eye effect, where it just comes like globy and swirly. Um, and then I had a couple people I know. One's on Facebook and he sells his product. His name is Chris Kuksma, I think, or Kusma, Kucsma. I'm sure he would welcome people hitting him up because he does commercial mushroom stuff. And he and another guy that I know who does not want to be publicly recognized, he created various tinctures of Amanita muscaria that are um, either low to highly psychoactive. Um, I don't want to really elaborate on it because I know at least one of the person's processes, but um, you know, it's a pretty simple to convert ibotenic acid to muscimol and create a really powerful and really positive and very safe um, psychedelic. So what I ended up doing with that was the low dose that I got from Chris has more of a microdose kind of effect, but something to be mindful and careful of with Amanita muscaria is that muscimol has a reverse tolerance effect. So the more that you take of it, the more sensitive you get to it, right? And I am going to say this dude's name, my buddy Shane Moss. If you all know Shane Moss, he's a comedian, science enthusiast. He's got a podcast called Here We Are, and he's got a podcast called um, Mind Under Matter, I think is what it is, that he does with Ramin Nazir, who is an insane comedian and psychedelic artist. These guys are really cool. Shane also has a documentary he put out called Psychonautics that I was in picking ovoids with him. So anyway, Shane, I gave him a couple bottles of this tincture and he dosed it quite regularly. And he said for a while he didn't really feel like he was feeling anything. And then and then one night he had a few drinks, which also hit GABA, right? Alcohol hits GABA. He had a few drinks and he said that out of nowhere he just started cussing people out in Russian. He was like, I don't know what the fuck happened, but I'm just like cussing, cussing, cussing. And I don't speak Russian. I don't fucking know Russian, but I was cussing in Russian. He's like, what is up with that? I was like, dude, the only thing I got for you is that you know, first historical use of Amanita muscaria that we know of came out of Siberia. That's all I got. Uh, I don't, you know. Anyway, that's a little, little side note. Sorry, I haven't thought about that for a long time. And it was really funny when he called me and gave me that report. But the high dose, highly concentrated um, tincture, sort of, is so potent. You could take 1 fluid ounce or a half of a fluid ounce. I'm sorry, it's half is like those the little children's Tylenol plastic cups. You know, take one of those, and you would be for about 4 hours um, seeing visuals that are so unlike psilocybin or um, DMT or ayahuasca. Uh, the visuals with Amanita only came at really high doses and were more of a like a digital mechanical you know how when you see uh like a digital video goes kind of wonky and the pixels the pixels are very cube like you know the Minecraft.
Mm-hmm.
Minecraft is all cubular or pixelated like that. That's similar to what those visuals were like for everybody that I talked to, everybody that I gave this stuff to. They would be fluid and moving, but they would be very kind of rigid. Um, and it was so much of a dreamlike, amazing dreamlike state, which is what, you know, I feel like that's the best quality that Amanita muscaria or muscimol has is that it becomes like this waking dream, unlike psilocybin, because there is a level of disassociation also associated with it. Whereas most of the time with psilocybin, you're like super in your body, you know. Uh, this was not in even like saying that out of body experience, first out of body experience I had through Amanita muscaria. Uh,
My favorite out of body experience substance. I never had it happen, but hear people talk about was K2. The
okay.
people that are trying to avoid drug tests. It was a synthetic cannabinoid.
Uh huh.
used to float around in like head shops and such. But every single time I meet someone who's tried it, like I'll always ask them if they had an out of body experience, and it is crazy that like when you hear about people who have those, like you were talking about with the tree, or next thing you know, like someone's in the corner of the room and they feel like they're looking down at themselves,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and like that's a weird one, especially when you're, I guess, not expecting it. But you said that you only had the out of body experience on the fresh Amanita muscaria.
Yeah, I never had it with other forms. I mean, there was a couple times laying in bed where I would get that kind of floaty, disassociative feeling, but not where I was out of my body looking at something. I just felt like I was out of my body floating. Uh, yeah. Now, psilocybin, I've had some definite, very powerful out of body. I've had some that I would be tempted to say that I consciously initiated. Um, so that's a whole thing. That's an interesting topic too, right? Like this astral projection and what is consciousness, the singular consciousness of Eric, Tristan, and then like the big consciousness that we're floating in. It's so interesting to consider. Um,
Makes me also think of like the readings about Amanita uh,
hmm,
on Arrowwood. It is the craziest one to read because it's like every single person that has posted on Arrowwood is like, oh yeah, I thought I was gonna die. Like
mhm.
there's not many substances out there where like you get this like nightmarish. I almost compare it to like a Hansel and Gretel. Maybe that's just because of like the fairy tales and like them being in the forest and whatever.
Mm.
Never had the experience, so I can't really talk about it. But it's very interesting. And then even when you read what is it, Mushrooms Russia History, like it's the only psychoactive mushroom that's like really talked about. Maybe Liberty Caps. I don't think so though.
In Watson's book?
Yeah, it talks about fly agaric.
Oh yeah, I would
Agaric.
assume. I would assume. But yeah, I wouldn't think Liberty Caps. I don't know if Liberty Caps have been found in Russia. I mean, it would make sense. The latitude surely must be a similar latitude, but maybe not a lot of reporting coming out of Russia. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I necessarily found it inherently dark or anything like that. I mean, when you say Hansel and Gretel, that's kind of what I think. Um, that's how I feel. The
Yeah.
the just eating the fresh mushroom was all bad for sure. And probably if there wasn't such a cultural curiosity around Amanita muscaria, then you wouldn't have people trying it like they do. I mean, that's
It's
a
not
lot of what
scheduled, people.
huh?
It's not scheduled. You
It's not
can go out there
scheduled.
and
No,
pick and eat as
it
dried
is
out and eat as much as you want legally.
it is illegal in either Alabama or Georgia. I can't remember
Really?
which one it is. Yeah, but there's one of those states. It's illegal in maybe even Mississippi. There's just one state though where it's illegal. Um, excuse me. I don't know what else. There was something you were saying that I was thinking in terms of the Amanita and relating it to the darker experiences. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say that it was inherently dark by any means. Uh, oh, the people going back and risking their life to eat this mushroom kind of thing. You were saying there's no other psychoactive out there like that people are going to really put themselves in harm's way to consume. But it's not. I mean, it's not really that dangerous. Very few people are going to eat 28 or even more than 10 or 15 grams of amanita. And yeah, back when I was reading it, because that's what I did. Like I read the books and I read the forums and all that stuff, like once or twice, a couple times. And then I was just like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go figure it out myself now, you know. And back then in whatever it would have been 2000 when I was trying to figure out what the deal was with Amanita. There was so little information available, really. Like thinking back on that, there were people that had tried it, and it generally was this is not to be fucked with kind of thing. But that's where there being no, really kind of broad and good information, you still know like people have been doing this, and so it's doable. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna find out. I'm just gonna do it slowly, you know. So anyway, here's to all of our ancestors that have been just nibbling on things, seeing what would happen.
This is kind of, I want to take this back to what we were talking about earlier. I came across this article that was talking about why psychedelics um, inherently seem to make people more left wing. And I think
Hmm.
that it's very interesting because to me, what do psychedelics end up doing? And you have the making you more open, making you more compassionate,
Hmm.
making you more, compassionate to your fellow humans, caring about whatever the hell that this big thing is. And I don't know, I just found that very interesting because then it means like, well, what does it mean to be left? Like, what does it mean to be politically on this side of the spectrum? Um, and then why is it that those two things overlap?
Well, I mean, I guess I come at it with a little bit different perspective, and I don't know if did you say liberal or left? How did you say?
It's the article claimed, I don't know if I'll be able to find it or not, but it said made people more left wing
Yeah,
was the way that it claimed it.
yeah. I don't really know that I agree with that. Um, I mean, actually certainly don't, because my belief is that the more you work with psychedelics, the more you abandon all the fucking parties and labels and all the, belonging to stuff. Now,
I agree
there
with
is
that.
there is a move towards openness, and
Yeah.
that's what we all could benefit more from, is by listening to the other and just being open to what we're hearing, and not necessarily having a firm decision on this is what this is. That's what psychedelics really ultimately do in terms of our, I don't know if I necessarily want to call it ontology, but the kind of the philosophical engagement with spirituality, societal issues, and including all of them, for environmentalism, like whatever impacts humans, as we become more aware, the more aware we become, the more we realize that we're all one thing, and the more we realize we're all one thing, the more we compassionate we become, and the more compassionate we become, the more we listen, and the more we listen, the more we learn that we're all one thing, and it just is this one big beautiful circle and cycle if we'll kind of go into it. But anytime like we're going to the left or the right, then we're actually exiting. Like, here's where it's at, you know. So definitely, I know they've done research. How much research has really been done, whatever sample sizes they're getting from, and all that. You can, surely to God, we all know by now, like, you can design a study to prove what you want to prove, and you're supposed to be designing studies to disprove what you want to prove. That's how you really do science. So yeah, sorry. I'm gonna research on Google. Fucking 30 seconds of Googling is not research. Trying to prove what you want to prove is not science. Anyway, there have been some studies that have shown that increased levels of openness are kind of the I think the biggest category that touches on that outcome that you're speaking to specifically. But environmental concerns, animal rights, civil rights, it's not a coincidence that as the civil rights movement started to gain massive momentum, and people were taking lots of psychedelics society wide, and things were shifting so quickly, that these safe, effective medicines, sacraments, were made the most illegal, placed into a category that, like, categorically is in opposition to everything that psychedelics do. They are proven medicinal. They are non-addictive. They are naturally grown, not some crazy like you got a laboratory. That's not one of the stipulations of a Schedule 1. But basically, this no medicinal value and high level of abuse, And so I don't know, man. Right now, I hope we do take this opportunity to engage more with psychedelics in even if we don't go into it like seeking to raise our consciousness, because that's much more of the conversation. That's much more of the language that was being spoken in the 60s, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna raise our consciousness, and now it's more like we're gonna fix our mental problems, you know, um, which is our limited consciousness. So either way, we're gonna get what we need.
Yeah. Another thing I guess like kind of brings up to me is, have you ever had someone say to you, because I've had it within my own life thus far, is they'll be like, well, are you
Sorry, I should turn off the comments. This dude's on here.
that's hilarious.
Go back. Go ahead, Tristan. Go back. What are you saying?
Are you just, when people say like, are you addicted to mushrooms? Like, are you addicted to this? Like, aren't you just, that's
Somebody
just
says that to
such a,
you?
oh yeah, I've had that. I've had that. Shout
Yeah.
out to you, mom. Um,
Okay. All right. Thanks for
yeah,
saying.
it's like just one of these things that makes no freaking sense. It's like, it's just a testament to someone who's not taking something that would be able to say something like, are you, like, yeah, as soon as this wears off, or like, what is it? Oh, I ate mushrooms 4 hours ago. Time to re-up.
Well,
Um,
you know what that says to me when somebody says that. What that says to me is that they're addicted to something.
hey,
First thing you come to is what my about my addiction. Well. Which that's the beautiful thing about, if we pay attention, people are always showing us who they are. Like everything that we were afraid of, like all that shit is all something that we got inside of us that we're trying to pretend like in there, trying to run from it. And
oh,
then that goes back into the politics thing, right? It's like I was thinking about this the other night, like how just fucking like the uh, you know whatever. I may piss some people off, is what I'm getting at here. A disclaimer that you may not like my opinion, and that's totally fine. That's one of the reasons you don't have to participate or whatever it is. So they could not exist were it not for the other. Each one, the left and the right, are like blaming each other for everything that's happening, but neither of them could exist were it not for the other. Like, what an immediate perspective shift that is, right? Oh shit. Well, okay. Well, thank you for being who you are then. And then what does that do? It just brings us again closer to this center of realizing that we're all just people, and all of us have some kind of indoctrinated belief. And that's the thing. Back to the research that you're pointing out, psilocybin, psychedelics, being able to, even in rats. Seen that study with rats and the mazes and the shock. Can you describe that better than I can? It's been a while since I read it.
oh, not the mazes and the shock. I thought you were talking about just like the addictive
No,
abuse potential. When you
no,
got like
they
rats that are killing themselves on coke.
yeah, the Coke thing. Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh, community's all they need. Oh shit, they're not addicted to Coke. Coke's not addictive. Wow. Anyway, you just need community. No, there was a study long ago. I mean, 10 or 15 years ago, probably, where they showed that psilocybin, it didn't cause the rats to forget that they had been shocked when they went down the maze, but it allowed them, because they would like randomly shock the rats, but still I have to go back and read the study. I don't want to. I do know what the believed outcome, whether they were trying to show it or trying to show something else, and found this out, was that psilocybin allowed the rat to change ingrained behavior patterns. I think that's how they went through this process of training these rats with electric shock to do like this, perform this certain path or function or something, and then they did this consistently for a long period of time, where the rats would not go into the area where the shock came from eventually, even though there was food right there for them to see, however it was, they wouldn't go. And then when they introduced psilocybin to the rats slowly, individually began to test that boundary again. Kind of like they were like, I wonder if this still does that thing. Whereas before it had just been like that was their habitual looping, like the expectation. It's going to shock me. So, that's in large part, I think, what this comes back to that you're talking about is that we are just given the opportunity to think about information that we have perceived or that we've applied whatever, some kind of value to, see it with like from more sides and see more potential in it. So, even like, fuck, it's so weird. Like recycling is one of the things that come to my mind. And
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'm a pretty darn liberal minded person, or like, like how do we even, that's the thing. Like, right when you start talking about like, are you liberal or conservative or like what? Anyway, I guess what I'm trying to get at here relating the recycling is that as I started to kind of look at this bigger picture and see that we're shipping all kinds of all of our recycling basically over to China, and like considering how this whole thing is actually working and the output, and you can go read there's a lot of information out there about kind of the output of recycling plants and the carbon that goes into recycling and how it doesn't balance out anywhere close to balance out. And the recycling is, seems to be more wasteful than not recycling. Like I personally find that to be an instance where I'm able to think about this thing outside of what I'm being told to think by the ideology that I would most closely align with. Because I would, on most issues, I would most closely align with what are democratic values, I think. But there's quite a few very substantial issues that are from what's considered the right, that I'm like, yeah, no, I'm all for that. That's how I want to do this thing. And so, you know, again, like I guess coming back to that, if we are thinking more critically or we're just being with information in a different way, then we step away from that polarized way of thinking. And that's something I want to try to do in more and more aspects of my life. I still certainly find myself being like judgmental or saying that this is how a thing is supposed to be, or when clearly I don't know what is good for things. So anyway,
I believe that you hit the nail on the head earlier when you just said that if there's anything that psilocybin and psychedelics in general will teach you about yourself, is that you truly are neither of these things that you try to grasp onto. And that was something that came up in the training the other day, that it's not really that you forget, but it's like, when you're sitting here on autopilot, you may try to grab onto like these identity strains or like these things. And I even think that with age, in a way, like we have these constructs. Like time is a fundamental principle. It's a fabric in ways, when we talk about mathematics and such. But time is also this weird. I don't know if you ever had that, like in any of your trips, that it's not that it's meaningless, but it's also, I don't know. It's like this. What does it mean to be 40? What does it mean to be 30? Like, is your soul older than that? And I don't know, just maybe a little bit odd of a thing to state, but
we're gonna talk about time. Talk about time. Time is an interesting one to talk about. Think about, be with. I mean, I like the idea. What I've been exposed to a lot lately is the idea of time as um, not necessarily an object, not a thing that is um, operating on dimensions that we can't access primarily. That our visibility of time is like the crosscut of this thing that we call time that is so much bigger than that as it expands and contracts. You know, have you ever seen the analogy of a fourth dimension um, in relation to like the flatworm story? Have you ever heard this? How it didn't really work for me until I heard it like this, thinking of the next dimension outside of the third dimension, which for us is labeled time, and but we don't know how other than our clock and our watching our bodies in material age. Um, but we know it's more than that. It's more than just something that because it permeates. It is. It's almost like time is God, right? Like it's our closest dimension to God. I don't know. And so the way it was explained is that if you were a two-dimensional flatworm moving around on two-dimensional flatworm plane, and a three-dimensional object came in front of you, right? So you're two-dimensional, and this three-dimensional thing comes in front of you, however it comes down through whatever. And when it does, like all you see is the two dimension. So you just see like if it was a square, we imagine it was a 3D square coming down, and the flatworm saw it sink into the flat earth there, then all the flatworm would see would be the lines of where it hit, or maybe dots depending on how, if it went in tilted or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like it would just be the flatness that it sees, and it would just that just and what that actually is, like that slice that they're seeing is just a part of something so much bigger. And so we're here in this three dimension, and that's how we see all these things in this three-dimensional way. But there is this thing that is moving. It seems to be moving through, or at least it is take it at least it takes up space between everything that is, right? So if now you imagine time as a thing, okay, and it's moving through three-dimensional space, or it's existing in three-dimensional space, the next question I have is, does it permeate everything, or does it function in the spaces between everything? And it seems like it permeates everything because everything changes according to time, and species and certain materials all kind of decomposed and at a consistent rate. So that suggests to me anyway that um, it permeates everything that is.
I was watching a small little documentary about the perception of time that different animals have,
Uh-huh.
and that because of their the way that it worded it was like the FPS that they like perceive that like a hummingbird is not behaving chaotic to a hummingbird, nor is a squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And 150 years is not a long time to a turtle.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, and I believe that that is one of the things that we kind of appreciate when we talk about animals in a way, but we give no respect to plants,
Oh yeah. No,
trees.
we don't think we
Screw
don't.
'em.
Yeah, we don't think about their awareness, their level of awareness, and mushrooms and all that for sure. Well, so like it's kind of what I'm saying. Like we have such a very limited awareness, and then you think about perception as it relates to time, and how with humans, you can see different lifespans in animals, but humans getting to explore time through our experience, and you can extend your life. right? And we know through physics that you can slow down time. Okay, now then what does that say about time? We can slow down time through speed, right? And
But you don't
gravity.
even perceive that it's slow. Like,
Well, I
that's
mean,
the
yeah,
interesting
no,
thing
that's a
to the
very
person up there.
that's an interesting way. That's an interesting point for sure. I mean, there is some kind of measurement of it. There is some kind of measurement of it, uh, and we can affect it by. It seems like we got uh, speed. We've got mass, which gravity associated with mass, and then it seems like we can affect time um, with our awareness, right? With our consciousness. Because I think, I don't know, can we not relate lifespan? And it has to be related lifespan to um, time itself, right? And so that hmm, that material decay can be expedited or slowed through awareness, through nutrition, through these different factors. Like, it just is, what is time? I mean, this has been one of the things that, if there I think if there's anything that coming out of these mushroom trips has really been a thing that I've just sat with and tried to feel, it is time.
Mm.
So, like, when people reverse age, right? Psilocybin makes people reverse age. You can see it physiologically. You can see it on them. People say it all the time. You look
Oh,
5 years younger. Do not, I swear to God. Well, I mean, all the time. When you live a life where you're feeding people psilocybin mushrooms on a regular basis in a group context, then that's all the time for me, right?
well,
It has
I just thought it was funny we were talking about time and then you said all the time.
all the time. Good point. Good point. But, like, no. So, I mean, many, many times, many, many times, so many I couldn't even count them. And if you experiment with yourselves that listening to this, I know we got 4 people out there on the eyeball. Sure would have loved to hear some other people in this conversation too, but it's okay. I like a good place to ramble, explore some of these ideas that do bang around in the head. Uh, but you absolutely see people reverse age with psilocybin. Um, there's
One
been
of
a
the
couple.
first things that ever came to me in one of my trips talking about like what Baba Booey said. I used to theorize about this and like I used to find religion in astrophysics books that I didn't even really understand, but some of them were like knocked down to a point to where like anybody can grab them.
Somebody like us, yeah, country boy can
Yeah,
read.
yeah, country boy can read. Yeah, and that I don't know, like I almost viewed it like God. But
Mm.
in my one of my first experiences, it was this like time isn't real. It doesn't matter.
Well, time isn't
And
real as we understand it. What Baba Boo's saying, you're saying there. Time isn't, our understanding of time isn't real.
yeah,
There's obviously something that is going on. There's something going on, and we call it time, but that ain't what it is. That's what I'm getting at too. In my long-winded way of saying that, yes, I have explored this idea and seeing people reverse age, that is like one of the biggest question marks. You come out of a mushroom experience and it's been 6 hours and it seems like two. That's one thing. That's just like, okay, where'd the time go? You know? Or you have a 5 minutes, 15 minutes that seems like 2 hours. It's like, what the fuck? And then, like, you go through these. You said, I kind of laughed when you said maybe my soul is older than, how old are you? 15 now?
25, quarter of the way through this whole thing.
See, you have somehow defied time. Your genes are defying time some way. And I do think that like when you bring in influences like psilocybin, because it's this impact on consciousness, awareness, right? Is time awareness? Now that's something I haven't really put those two words together before. Is time awareness? Because with time, there is always awareness. And with awareness, there is always time.
Well, it makes me think about like whenever we think about all these insects that Baba Booey loves to go out there and watch, like they are like exactly what you're saying. Like they're if you're able to tap into their awareness, that 20 minutes is a lifetime. That 20 minutes is 4 hours. That
Mhm.
5 minutes is 4 hours. So I guess I could kind of see that in a way. Um, I don't know. This is definitely a rambly thing, but I appreciate it. Going back to what you're saying, that things happen all the time though in Trip Space. How many Michael Pollan writes about this in his book that he was the person who gave him mushrooms, her face morphed into Maria Sabina. I have in the mushroom space had people's faces turn purple. Like just there's no real appearance of skin, just color.
Mm. But
Explain, Eric.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know. What do you mean? Uh, hmm. I'm still kind of stuck on this time thing, man, because it's just been something I haven't thought about for a while, and I've never thought of awareness and time are always associated. You can't. There's no experience of time without awareness,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, and I do want to live as long as I can. Like
What does that mean for you, though?
that's another interesting thing. I know, right? Because we live forever no matter what. I mean, that's another that the whole why Taoism has this kind of intrigue to me. Um, there is this tradition among ancient Taoism of this quest for immortality, and not in some kind of elixir, but in like this combinatory practice of everything that we do, including the sacred plants that we consume. Um, and man, that is a mastery of time. That's something this is gonna be with me, because that's the other thing that comes out of the mushroom experience is that what you just now said, like what's a long life when you live forever, like how whatever we you know uh so I don't know. The shift in face thing and the visual stuff is something that I have not had a ton of experience with. I'm not a super visual tripper. Um, I have had many people say things about my face to them. I've had people say that my face, multiple people say that my face takes on a bunch of different faces in mushrooms. And, I was always intrigued as a child by the only kind of horror story or whatever not science fiction but scary thing that ever really got me uh, was werewolves and the notion of shape shifting, lycanthropy, you know, and it does seem like there's some of that in there's that ability in life. Period. There are people that, um, yeah, just they can somehow interact with that visual field, you know, uh, and I don't know. It's been curious to me why I am, and we just all are different, but I'm so not visual in my trips.
Is that dose dependent, or I mean, maybe to a point,
I mean,
but
I've had strains that were much more visual. Um, I've had periods where I would have a lot of internal visuals. I've really only known a handful of people that ever had much open-eyed visuals on mushrooms. LSD and DMT different, um, but yeah. So do you get a lot of open-eye visuals generally with mushrooms?
I mean, I would say more like fractalish. just the
tracers and stuff.
or staring at a mountain, just watching or at trees,
Yeah,
watching the different depths. I would say
yeah,
a great appreciation for depth and things. Yeah, no, closed eyes visuals, corridors sometimes.
yeah, yeah. I wonder if Baba Booey would want to come in here and talk about some of his open-eyed visuals. This is an interesting topic to me because I experience it so little. But I know one guy. Um, he probably wouldn't care if I gave him a shout out, but I'm not going to just because I don't know. Uh, but he was this dude straight,
Dora.
straight up. There you go. Straight up saw streams of energy moving between people. What's up, Baba Booey?
What up? What up?
Tell us about what you're seeing out there, man.
Dude, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Y'all have never seen like the fractal things like morph into things like in trees or anything?
No, not really, man. I see fractals and that kind of stuff, but it's never been where it turned into like
You never seen a snake?
with eyes closed, tons, but never eyes open. I knew a guy. That's what I said. I knew this other guy years ago, Gandalf. I've told the story about. He would see with eyes open. He sitting there with me one night. He saw this big ass snake crawling down through the forest. But I always wished I could, man, because that sounds so cool.
Really? So you don't ever like get crazy visuals when you eat like a bunch of them or anything? Like open eyed?
No, not really. I've seen orbs of light moving around people. Um, I have no. I mean, I did a 15-gram dose back in, or not 15, 12 and a half back in December, and I did a 10-gram dose that same week, and I mean, just never. There was one time years or years ago I saw this like the Aztec calendar. I don't know where that was. I like looking at this carpet, and it started like it wasn't the Aztec calendar per se, but it was like this interlocking concentric rings that were shifting at their own time. It was like there was nothing predictable about it, and it was multiple levels that were shifting at one time, and that was pretty incredible. But no, man,
Wow.
that kind of stuff fascinates me. Seeing like animals or beings or whatever. Tell me some more.
Dude, like I've stared at the wallpaper and like turned into like a vortex of it was like going on a roller coaster or something. I've seen all kinds of stuff, dude. That's crazy.
Wow, lucky you.
So like when you're eating 15 grams, like what do you it's just all like in your head. You're just like
No, I
talking to
mean some of it is, but then some of it I'm outside looking at things, and uh, I'm a pretty vocal. You can probably tell because I don't stop talking if I don't have to. Uh, that and so sometimes there can be a fair amount of vocalization, um, but like that's why one of the reasons I haven't been doing bigger doses for a while is because I can't find anywhere quiet. I mean, when I start,
mm,
if I start laughing, or not quiet, sorry, not quiet,
oh,
private. Because if I start laughing, if I start going through a thing, like it's gonna be loud. Um, if I take a big dose, I have this creature that I turn into very often on a big dose. Um, but yeah, I wonder.
what do you,
Go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, what do you mean? Like you what kind of noises you make? You like screaming and stuff?
Man, you know what I thought about? Because I've been listening to some of these channelers lately, something I never thought I would be doing. Uh, but I thought about for this thing, this on psilocybin, what if I like really tried to go into meditation and really tried to channel that being that I become? Because there is maybe y'all have experienced this, but this kind of like, oh, this is the mushroom me. And the more like mature I get in there, the more I'm like, oh, I know this guy. He's a lot of fun. So yeah, it can get loud. But the creature is like I feel like it is a mixture of I feel like it's like a feathered dragon. That's how I feel like it is. And it is, dude, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Can we, somebody else probably wants to talk. I've been talking a lot tonight, but this, because
No,
this,
keep talking, dude. Keep
oh,
talking. I want to hear. I want to hear about these noises you make too. Like,
Oh, those deep. Man. I mean, it's just, there is definitely some snarling and growling and, or can't, has been. Uh, the last one that I did that happened like that turned like that, and that was that big dose that, or 12 and a half that I did. It it was like the most clarity I ever had on that kind of manifestation of it, but it was like there's this theme of the light. There's this recurring, very deep, ancient theme, a very symbol of light chasing dark and light shining and just like through time, as we're talking about time, permeating every crack, everything, and really shedding light on everything. And you think about the mushroom and how it has this tendency of making us face the truth and face what is, and just shining light on everything. And this thing, when it vocalizes through me, it that's how I understand it anyway, when I am embodying this thing, is that it becomes God, dude, woo, I'm gonna go back into this. It was defending, particularly like the like this energy that has been spreading war, that has just been a machine of bone crunching, flesh grinding, just in no regard for human life, is like that's one of the things it is going to continue to shine light on, um, until everybody sees what this is all about, because we are killing ourselves by killing each other, period. And it is the kind of that kind of energy behind that is just this arrogant ignorance that thinks it thinks it's unstoppable. It just thinks it's unstoppable. And in a certain way it is, because there will always be the balance held. There will always be the light and the dark, period. But the endless cycle that we're on is this light moving dark out, moving it. And it's kind of interesting when you think about turning lights on, and where does the dark go? you know you know what I'm saying? Where's the dark go? It's not gone. It's just not dark right now because there's light. And this thing, this being
I love that.
is like chasing darkness throughout time and space. And sometimes there's this element of the mushroom, like the I don't want to use the word battle anymore, but the balance, the kind of like the balance that's being held between fungi, bacteria, and viruses, and that they are a physical kind of form of this interstellar, intergalactic balance of the light and the dark. So yeah, and depending on where I'm at, like in Jamaica, I don't know. Anyway, it can get really growly and vomity. I'm like puking. The last time I was, puking out a lot, purging out a lot. That just felt like it was purging this this trauma from the human family. This fucking kill. Just keep killing, man. Like, and we just keep coming back. You know what I'm saying? It's like they keep killing people, and then people keep coming back and keep being like, "You can't kill us." So, and then they kill them, and then they come back and like, "I told you couldn't kill me. I'm back here again." So yeah, it's a funny little.
Can we please get a comment here on Horny Kitty's comment?
Horny mushrooms trick you into taking a large dose, then teach you a lesson. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't they just have that way of just like, oh, come on in. It's fun. You'll just giggle. You'll just yawn a little bit. Then like, oh, that was fun. I should do more. Oh, that was fun. I should do more. And then you're like, holy fuck, what have I gotten myself into now? Yes. But isn't that the beautiful thing, though, Horny Kitty? And if you want to come have a conversation with us for 9 minutes, you're welcome to. Isn't that the thing about the mushrooms is that they're always teaching us something? Back when I was doing LSD and having no idea what I was doing, oh, Sasha, when I was back early in my psychedelic world, and you would come out of experiences and you just like, I don't know what I learned, but I learned something. You know, there was something very deep there. And as we get more mature in it, and we can actually start, we have community first and foremost, where we can do our processing and integrating and reflecting, you know, and learn that lesson quicker. All right, Sasha, what's up, man? We got about 10 minutes here. What you got for us, bro?
Yeah, I wanted to start off by saying that I came in at an interesting time in the podcast. You were just talking about purging and some pretty heavy topics, but I kind of want to switch direction a little bit. I wanted to follow up on last week's podcast where we talked about my reluctance to re-enter the psychedelic experience. And I've come to resolve the matter more or less, realizing that I still need time, and that's totally okay. Also, this might be worth your interest. I will be attending a court hearing tomorrow for the wrongful death lawsuit for SoulQuest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Long story short, they're still in the discovery process, and the attorneys for Mr. Young and SoulQuest proper have been reluctant to engage in the discovery process. That's one way to put it. From their perspective, they're saying that Mr. Chapman, the Begley family attorney, is asking too much in the discovery process and that he's overstepping his bounds. We'll see what happens tomorrow. If anybody wants to join me, it's a public meeting. It's on Zoom, technically. So if you aren't in Orlando, you can check it out. 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Anybody wants to DM me, I'll send you the information. But I'll follow up with you, Eric, on Instagram later.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that's moving, huh?
The trial date is set for, I believe, the second half of March next year.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No. That's yeah. I'm so curious to see what goes down with that. That is a big one. And I mean, frankly, if SoulQuest is allowed to continue operating after March of next year or 6 months thereafter or whatever it takes, then that will be some very revelatory news for the psychedelic community, to say the least. But I'm glad you came on because, you know, even though we're not going to have much time, I want to bring this back in. Maybe next week, if you have some time, we can talk about it more because it does deserve really exploring out. And that is how we talk about psychedelics to our communities and to our families and, you know, friends and whatnot. Because there's so much more. You know, we kind of went on just a little blip about, you know, just like dropping information on them and then like in the bounce back, hitting them with some like real information. But as I thought about it through the week, you know, just like there's so many different types of groups and types of people that we have to talk about or will be talking about psychedelics with if we are mindful advocates. And so like being able to think about those different scenarios and kind of demographics in a way, I think would be really beautiful. So if you got time next week, man, hop in and give us an update maybe, and we can carry that conversation on a little longer.
That would be great. I wanted to add something really quickly, only take about a minute. I actually caught the first half of the podcast, about the first 30 minutes or so, and it was nice that you all brought me up. I did want to follow up on something that Tristan said. You might be able to see on the screen. My pronouns are they, them. I am a non-binary individual. If I can, if you'd like to engage in a really brief, informative discussion about that, I could. But simply put, if you're talking about me, I would appreciate if you could do that. I don't identify as a man. That's a simple way to put it.
Cool. Not a problem. Glad you shared that with us.
Yeah, no,
Thank
I
you.
definitely appreciate that. There's
Yeah.
no reason at all for people not to feel respected in this society that we live in. So if there's anything that I can do, yeah.
This was actually a topic that is been a focus of ours in the cleric training in the last 2 weeks, was diversity and the groups that we encounter and the kind of perspectives that we encounter in psychedelics. And it also feeds into what Tristan was talking about in terms of the political spectrum, in that one of the beautiful things and challenging things about psychedelics is because everybody's in so much need. There are so many different people that are coming to psychedelics, and it's a beautiful opportunity to see our similarities. It's also an opportunity for that highlights our differences as well. And so if we can become better communicators and just like you're doing, communicate your needs, your wants, then like everybody just respects everybody doing whatever it is they're doing. I don't give a shit how you identify yourself. If you have a way that that helps you feel more in alignment with where your awareness is, fucking rock on.
I appreciate that.
Now, I think this is another thing that kind of came up in our conversation in the training as well. And I'm just sharing this because I think it's important for the entire psychedelic community, is that within that also there are a lot of people who have been in a particular framework for a very long time. And so them transitioning from that framework is going to take some time as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, this is something I've been wanting to talk about more and within the psychedelic community, is the real diversity conversation that isn't just kind of centered around ethnicities, but identities.
Yeah. It's a really great discussion to unpack. Something that we couldn't do in 2 minutes that are left, but certainly for another time. It's something that I am happy to I'm happy to engage in discussions around that topic, because a lot of people can gain a sense of appreciation for the topic, and for some people who are in the audience, it might help them, as the saying goes, come out of the closet in a sense.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that for sure. That's again, like it's funny how so much of this is circling back into itself. But as we were talking tonight about the kind of the Supreme Court decision around Roe versus Wade, and the implications of that, and I guess again, we got 30 seconds now to comment on this, but coming back to, anytime you make a rule, anytime you tell people they shouldn't do something or shouldn't pay attention to something, then there you just put their attention, and there you just invited their interest, so yeah, talk about it all.
The forbidden fruit effect is definitely real. Well, actually, that's probably not the best way to frame it. Actually, I take that back. But yes, once you stigmatize something that's perfectly legitimate,
Hmm.
that's when you run into areas where people push back.
For sure. For sure. All right, cool, Sasha. Well, thanks for checking in, giving us an update. And yeah, think about next week if you want to hop in and talk about talking about psychedelics.
Sounds great.
All right. Peace, everybody. Till next time, we'll see you on Psilocybin then.